Okay, I think we can start. Hello everyone, and welcome to this webinar, which is entitled AI and Quality Data for Inclusive Development, Experiences and Solutions from the Global South. So we're about 60, 70 online. I would like to welcome everyone and welcome and special thanks to our four fantastic panelists, whom I will introduce shortly. My name is François Fontenot. I'm a senior advisor in Paris 21 and in the OECD as well on AI and data quality. So I'm very happy to be here and give a few words of introduction to frame our conversation today, which will be for an hour. First, I'd like to make the link with the French AI Action Summit. You've seen we managed to get the label and qualify this conversation and elevate our conversation to this world-class summit. So it's something which is really good. We were not sure to obtain the label, so I wanted to thank the team in the first place in Paris 21 to make it happen and to elevate our voice in that context. Our offices in the OECD are actually very close to where the summit was taking place, just a few kilometers away from here. So we had the heads of states and the heads of civil societies, head of tech companies, all these leaders gathering during the last 2 days to really chart a course for AI that truly serves society. So the political declaration has been signed yesterday night. There was lots of coverage in all the media, in all the countries, I suppose. We heard from many Paris 21 friends all over the globe from how they were seeing this. And the summit actually continues the whole week with lots of technical events and showcases for today and the remaining of the week. So why we did it in Paris 21 and what it means for our particular standpoint on this AI debate. I wanted to maybe share 3 things which I took away myself from the summit and which relates to this conversation we will be having. The first one really is the pace of development, and I was absolutely shocked by the pace of innovation and the new stuff which we are brought to every day on a daily basis, which really questions our own capacity to keep track and to understand what's going on. And I think that's a key thing with AI when we discuss it with official statisticians or aid agencies. Really keeping track is difficult, and with AI it's really happening in front of us. And before you understand it, it's actually done and it's gone. So it's a real challenge. And I think what we heard over the last 2 days was the fact that the future will be even faster as we move from LLM and ChatGPT to what is called agentic AI. That's first one, really the pace of development. The second lesson I took away is really this debate on innovation versus regulation. I think the debate has been raging in Paris, with very clear positions from different countries. It's true that I think AI is a difficult topic, a very political technology. We see it every day, and in the stormy times which we are living in, the debate is quite polarized. Yet for us in official statistics again, or larger in the data world, not the even larger AI world, most of us understand this debate, innovation versus regulation, as non-binary. It's not innovate or regulate. And we have seen, many of us, that sound data governance enables actually sound data innovation, which works for the people and with the people. So that could be actually one lesson or one piece of knowledge which this community could share with the broader AI community, which could be useful. The third takeaway, and I'll be short, is actually semantic. At times when I was listening to speakers in the summit, we were not speaking the same languages. There are many different bubbles, the tech, the policy guys, the AI governance, the one which govern with AI, the ones who want to govern AI, and so on. We all speak different languages. But one word which is very common all over the place and understood very differently is actually the word data. And I found one graph which I really enjoyed, and I'm going to share it. So I can't share it because I'm just a speaker, I'm not a presenter. But you have a very good visual which actually locates what we official statisticians call data and statistics and quality data, and how this is actually part of what the AI machine calls data. Which includes text, which includes images, which include MP4, which includes GPS and sensor data. And I think this is quite telling, and I'll be sharing these infographics afterwards. It's quite telling of the specific perspective and standpoint from official statistics in this whole debate. And we have a voice, we are on the map, we are not alone, we have to speak the same language. And I think that's here where Paris 21 and this event can play a role. So I think we have a number of questions associated with some of this larger debate. Some of these questions can be articulated under data for AI and how our official statistics can be found by the AI machine and can train the AI machine, and how we can make ourselves even more useful and visible. An associated question is really about how we can make sure that data is used for good and for benefits for societies. And the other side of the coin is really on AI for data, and seeing AI as a chance for NSOs and data agencies in ministries and at large to really modernize and look into efficiencies at a time where efficiency gain and productivity of governments is very high on the priority of everyone. So these are some of the questions which our four panelists will touch upon. I will invite them to try to see the glass half full and not half empty, and try to give some positive examples on what they have seen in their from their very specific perspective. So with this, I'd like to start with the first intervention, which will be from Prof. Sam from Ghana. He's the government statistician, the chief statistician of Ghana, and also the chairman of Paris 21. So you have 7 minutes, Prof. Sam, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Francois, and good morning, good afternoon. I hope I can be heard. Francois, can I be heard, please? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you very well, and we can see the slides. All good.
Great. So thank you very much, Francois. I think you've provided a very good context to this presentation, and I'll quickly run through the slides. And based on the background that you've given, what I want us to reflect on are 6 broad issues: to rethink the overview of AI and what it means for NSOs, really think about which type of AI that NSO should focus on, and then I'll quickly reflect our minds on some of the challenges with traditional statistical operations, and then, as you rightly indicated, what is the scope of quality data for inclusive development, and then conclude with some ongoing and potential use cases in Ghana and the power dynamics in the ecosystem. I don't intend boring this group of participants with this slide because we all are aware of the scope of AI. We have an overview of it. The fuel for AI is data. It has a component that is the algorithm part and its ability to process data quickly. What I really want to emphasize on is the second part of this slide, which poses a threat to us as a national statistical system, more particularly as national statistical offices. So what I try to avert our minds to is that, as you rightly said, Francois, the input for AI is data. That input that is going into AI comes in different forms. So we really have a risk of not being able to tell what the data would bring out. So we face what is called the data entropy, which really has to do with our inability to really predict something that we don't know how is going into a system of different collection of technologies and what is going to come out of it. If we don't take any action, and that is why I say that there's a need for us to take a positive aggression approach. If we don't take any action, what you see down there is that some statistics will be generated anyway, and then this statistics is going to inform policy. But what we've done very well as a community is that we've kept on campaigning and ensuring that we build up data and statistical literacy, set up systems for data and statistical governance, and obviously based on our fundamental principles of official statistics and our generic statistics process mapping model, we have a framework that guides what we do, which enables us to influence policy. So we really realize that the whole AI space, both from an input point of view and from an output point of view, revolves around data, which, as you rightly indicated, is our masterpiece, what we know best at doing. Then when it comes to AI, one thing that Francois, you did mention is that we sometimes put AI in a world that we think we don't belong. And really, if you look at how AI has developed since the 1950s and the different parts of it, we don't want to think as AI coming to take the work of field officers, building robots to go and take data for us. But let's look at the dimensions of AI that we think are low-hanging fruits that we can take advantage of. So this is really the narrow perspective of AI, and where we've seen a lot of strides. And again, as you rightly mentioned, is the area around generative AI. Based on information that we have in the past, what can we tell going forward, or what can we do with much faster pace and so on? And also some attempts have been made in the world of predictive AI, which I know is an area that national statistical offices do not want to go. But given the contemporary complex challenges that we have, we at Ghana Statistical Service have attempted issues around nowcasting instead of forecasting, which gives policymakers an idea of what is going to happen in the next shortest possible time. So the main message here is that we should not necessarily think about AI from the perspective of building robots to take about our jobs, but more importantly, approach AI from the perspective of what we are living with now and how we can take advantage of it. Then this slide just talks about the challenges that we face with traditional statistics. Now it's a real challenge in defining what data to use, whether people want to replace traditional data sources with non-traditional data sources. Do we want to continue processing data based on long time periods and so on and so forth? And these are things that, as I indicated, the reactive AI, the narrow AI in terms of the three perspectives up to the generative AI can easily do for us, especially when it comes to dissemination of statistics and the extent to which data, statistics, and policy align. And this is where I feel that there is a lot of scope for us as national statistical offices once we come to accept the fact that we already live with systems that allows us to process things better, allows us to work with some algorithms to understand the digital footprints that we are leaving on a daily basis. So the first point is that the digital footprints that we live in every day based on our actions every day is what is feeding into AI. And that is the world that we find ourselves in. So we need to be part of that conversation to ensure that that data that feeds into AI to tell us what is going to happen in the next 2 days or in the next future, it goes through a certain process that it cleans out, people are aware of what is done to inform what we are doing. Then from our generic statistics process mapping point of view, when it comes to data collection, one example that I always give to my colleagues here is that any national statistical office preparing for field work would design its questionnaire, would design its training model, would have its tabulation plan. And these are things that we do over and over again. And this is what generative AI can easily do for us because it's a sequence that we always follow. So we can definitely deploy AI in that regard to ensure that we do that. So throughout all the processes, data processing, data analysis, data use, and stewardship, and lastly to the focal area that you talked about in terms of inclusivity. This is what, again, AI can do for us, especially in countries that have close to 100% mobile phone penetration. And people every day, as I indicated earlier on, are leaving digital footprints. How do we take advantage of such platforms to ensure that we have an inclusive system where everybody is on board when it comes to data collection and no one is left behind? So across all our array of exercises, we can deploy AI tools to ensure that, as I indicated, we hasten the time in doing this. We improve on the quality of the data and statistics that we get out of it to enhance better policy making. So our engagement, in my view, with AI issues really started around 2002, 2003, when as an office, we onboarded what we call the CAN agenda, which simply talks about the fact that whatever you do, try and automate the processes. And again, this is the third bit when you think about the three pillars of AI. That is the muscle of the brain, its ability to do things in a quicker way. So instead of going through the traditional approaches in classifying ISIC and ISCO, we deploy tools that would automatically do that for us. We did a marine litter classification, look at the diverse classifications of litter that we can think about. Again, AI was deployed to do that. I mentioned earlier that the power of analysis rests with our ability to onboard AI. So we're currently finalizing a report on education based on administrative data that has been collected since 2000. So there is an array of things that we can do once we give AI its right definition, rather than thinking about it as something that is up in the sky that is difficult to read there. You say you don't have infrastructure, you don't have resources, and so on. Indeed, all the three pillars that I talked about are things that are around us, and we can easily do that. So going forward, we still are not relenting on our efforts to ensure that we truly onboard AI. So we are using the automatic identification system data, which is a globally accessible data, to produce some CO2 emissions to enhance our environmental statistics. I talked about the data stewardship earlier on. I had mentioned in several platforms the need to have a repository of data, statistics, and policy so that we minimize that disconnect between data, statistics, and policy. And this is something that once you have this national or global online repository, you can easily write a large language model to help you identify the disconnects that sits within data, statistics, policy, and also that cuts across it. We've developed a statistical online bank, which is accessible nationally and globally. The next phase that we go in is to ensure that we develop what we call a stats chart, where WhatsApp people can type in any statistical question that they need through their WhatsApp, and then it's linked to our statistical online bank, and it pulls the data that we require. There is a lot of power dynamics in the system, and we really need to navigate around it circumspectively to ensure that we really are on the right path in onboarding AI. The first has to do with the rationale for adaptation, which I've talked about strongly. I speak to a lot of government officials, and they think about AI as something up in the sky. They do not feel that it's something that we are living with, and we don't have any other option than to onboard it as a country and work with it. We as a country, we've had a challenge where the National Data Protection Commission under the Ministry of Communication and Digitalization developed the National AI Strategy, which is not in sync with the National Strategy for the Development of Statistics. And again, they went ahead to develop the National Data Strategy. So one area that we need to smoothen out when it comes to the power dynamics is to consciously, deliberately draw the synergies between AI strategies, national data strategies, and the national strategy for the development of statistics. Francois, you talked about the issue of legal frameworks. It's about time that as we develop the AI strategies, we think about the legal frameworks that governs it from the perspectives of the tech, the policymakers, the national statistical system, and the other key stakeholders that are in. And lastly, you highlighted the issue of capacities. And here we don't look at it only from the human point of view, but obviously from the financial and infrastructure point of view. Thank you very much. And I believe I've stayed within the 7 minutes.
Absolutely, Prof. Sam, mission accomplished. Well, thanks for giving us such a positive story on what you're doing at GSS. And when you start to map successes on history line and presenting the successes from 2 years ago, I think you're certainly on the right boat in terms of having AI as yet another tool in your toolbox. I like what you said on making AI inclusive and how the NSO can help in this regard and influence other stakeholders in the AI ecosystem. So thanks a lot. I'll be moving to our next panelist. And I have the pleasure to introduce Paul Witter, who's a director at Humanitarian OpenStreetMap, or HOT. Thanks for being with us. I understand you're just off the plane from Kenya and you have the floor.
Thanks so much. Once I find the audio button. Thanks so much, Francois. Yes, indeed, I'm a director at Humanitarian OpenStreetMap of both the data and also temporarily of the East and Southern Africa Hub. I work with Humanitarian OpenStreetMap team, which is a US nonprofit international organization with operating under 4 regional hubs. And we work in essentially open data and open maps in support of humanitarian action, international development, etc. And our key driver is that we want to ensure that there's equitable access to map data all across the world, not just limited to the Western world. And there's still too many places where a lack of data and a lack of actionable data specifically leads to people being left out of critical services, access to water, education, health services, etc. And I think, yeah, just to connect to reality and current affairs that is also severely impacted by the current shovels at USAID and the US government, unfortunately. Oops, what is happening here? Reload. Okay, something is not loading. Let me try and figure out what this is. Oh, it does work. So when we look at, I'll take a very practical view here. We've been making use of AI and machine learning for, I think, 6 to 7 years now, from more primitive forms to what we are currently using. And there's a number of ways in which we've found it to be helpful, other ways in which we've found it to be less helpful. And you need to be really aware of the limitations to this type of technology to be able to use it effectively. So what's really great at some of the newer data sets that we are utilizing, I think a couple logos have gone missing in the slide crash, is that there's many of the big tech companies who are currently putting out open data sets of buildings, road networks, other infrastructure based on essentially machine learning and feature extraction from satellite imagery. And these data sets can be really helpful in making initial assessments of like populations affected, impacted, overall presence and scope and distribution of populations in more remote areas where there's no good map data available, etc. And these also have the potential to renew and based on newer available imagery set quite rapidly, much faster than traditional methods of mapping, essentially drawing buildings and roads by hand would do. So there's data sets from Google Open Buildings, Microsoft, Meta, Overture Maps, which is essentially a big tech consortium, which is combining different data sets into ready-to-use packages. And more of these are becoming available. For this, how we're using this ourselves is that we use this to essentially be more effective in creating the baseline maps that we need to have to build other use cases and use of data on top of. So for us, having access to the first layer, the physical reality, what are the buildings, what are the roads, is just the first step to understanding and making a map that's usable to people, essentially. So that's used as the basis for allowing people and communities to draw on top of those, like where are areas that are at risk of flooding, of droughts, of other climate-related hazards and risks. Attach additional information in terms of like what are the street names, what are the administrative boundaries, and whatever else is the topic that you want to investigate. So concretely, a recent project that we ran with Microsoft Data for Good was using AI-assisted mapping in Nigeria and Kenya, which went into helping public health interventions with regards to vaccinations and immunization in Nigeria, and work in Kenya around the refugee camps in the north. So in Kenya, in the refugee camps there, we used AI models to work on essentially UAV imagery of Kakuma, Kalabay, two of the big camps in the north, to detect buildings and shelter and changes in those also over time, roof types, solar panels, do people have access to electricity, solar I mentioned, but also electricity lines, etc., which you can identify by the shade if you know the time of day, etc. And that leads to UNHCR being able to use this type of data for analyzing access to water supply. Who has that access? Where are the water wells? What is the travel distance from shelter from people to those sources? Who has access to primary healthcare, and what are the travel distances to those? So it really speeds up the whole mapping cycle. The bad is that generally these types of data sets we use are just limited to vector shapes. They don't really attach yet to further layers of metadata, at least not automatically. So that's where a manual component comes in, matching and integrating layers of data. And there's also other familiar challenges as with other forms of AI. So for some of these big global data sets, it's really unclear, like what is the source data that's being used for feature extraction? It's satellite imagery, mosaics, but what is the time period and time lag in those? Sometimes scenes you purchase from San Maxo might be several years old, and you just don't quite know if you're looking at something very recent or something that's 5 years old in places. What is the training data used to train these models? You don't really know what's being used for that, what the scale is, what the geographical dispersion and the sampling, etc. The methodology behind that. So that leads to some really ugly outputs at times, which you need to be very cognizant of. Like if we're looking at the Facebook roads data sets, the deserts in Africa, Sahara, are littered with roads, according to these data sets, because a lot of things that are, well, lines in the sand are labeled as roads. There's bias in training data sets. So if we look in, I think this is South Sudan, these models might be very good at recognizing rectangular proper building shapes, but they will miss any and all round buildings or more traditional forms of dwellings and accommodation. Sometimes this is in the Middle East, it just can't make sense of it because maybe these models were just trained on how buildings look in the Western world and not necessarily on how they look in the Arabic Peninsula. There are alternatives, and one that I want to briefly highlight is one that we are developing ourselves, which is called FAIR. Free accessible AI, I think is some of the letters in there, which doesn't work like the models that the big tech companies put out, which are essentially very top-down global models. This works on locally procured imagery. You have control over the full pipeline, and this essentially puts power and control over the AI process in the hands of the end user, which are typically the people we work with, people living in communities in Africa, Southeast Asia, South Central America. So you're able to fly drones, UAVs yourselves, capture image for that, feed that into an AI model for which you generate training data, which is locally appropriate, contextualized. So if there's a lot of round buildings in the vicinity you're flying, that's what you will also include in the training data. And this leads to much more appropriate results at the local level, in addition to putting the control of the whole workflow and the model at the hands of the people actually using and needing to understand the data. So that's where I want to leave it at for today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul, and thanks for sticking to the time. I really liked your example, your last example on FAIR, and how local AI can be a solution for mitigating bias and enhancing the relevance to the problems which need to be fixed by AI models or AI data. So thanks a lot. I'll pass the floor now to our next speaker, Madame Thérèse Uwimana. You're the Director of the Data Evolution and Big Data at the NSO in Rwanda, the National Institute of Statistics of Rwanda. Thérèse, you have the floor. Yes, we can see the slides. They are not in presentation mode, though. If you can. Yep, perfect. Over to you.
Is it better now? Okay. Thank you for the floor. I will maybe compliment my best speakers who came before me. Actually, I'm going to share some of the I'm going to share a little bit of background where the National Institute of Statistics comes from when it comes to embracing technology and AI, and share a few use cases, and I will conclude with what we see as key enablers to embrace this technology. So first and foremost, it started back in 2017 when the government of Rwanda trusted the National Institute of Statistics with the coordination of the data revolution policy. And from then, we were trusted globally to host the International Conference on Big Data and for Official Statistics. It was held in 2019. And next, from that conference, we were trusted again to host the United Nations Regional Hub for Big Data and Data Science for Africa. So from that, there was a need to have data scientists in office, and they were recruited under the department which I'm heading currently, and we are now 13 data scientists in total. So from that background, we've been since then explored different innovation and innovative projects, but here I will just limit myself to those that are exploring AI and machine learning. So we've done quite some work around data dissemination, but we've also explored inclusion, where we developed a gender data lab in partnership with Paris 21. Here leading this event. We've also explored how we can complement our agricultural statistics, but also we are exploring how we can embrace environmental statistics. So if I go quickly to the first project we are exploring a project we call Gender Data Lab. It's an inclusion project where we realize that gender data is not really accessible to whoever needs them. So in partnership with Paris 21, we are developing a tool exploring AI so that we allow lay people who are not really statistical literate to ask and have answers when it comes to gender-related statistics. We are also working on a project where we are exploring AI and machine learning, mainly computer vision, to detect crops. In our side here in the region, we do much crops and on a small scale. So we have a lot of challenges when it comes to agricultural statistics. So we are exploring how AI can help us automate some of the work, and we are able to release some of our experts' time to more advanced work. So also regarding data dissemination, we have done some exploratory work in the office. When it comes to interactive dashboards, we've received feedback from a lot of users that I don't know how it is in other offices, but we used to disseminate our products into PDFs and a lot of huge reports. You know, when it comes to statistics, there are a lot of big and reports. So now we are exploring how AI can help us package statistical products in a very interactive and user-friendly manner. And also we are exploring chatbots so that we allow people to query the website easily. So those are some of the use cases I thought they are relevant for today's topic. But we are also exploring capacity development, because when we came into the office, we were not this expert. This topic is really new, and we always need to build our capacities so that we leverage them. So we are conducting competitions, hackathons, regular trainings. But also I want to mention that it's very key to have right partnerships so that we make it sustainable. So I think this is my last slide. I wanted to bring about what are the key enablers, at least in our perspective. We need to have really regular and intentional capacity building programs so that we ensure we have right expertise locally. And we also have to make sure that we have, I don't know in other offices, but it's usually we don't have enough human resource to do research. But when it comes to these technologies, we have to have time and human people who are ready to do research, because you cannot just deploy these AI tools without testing them for even a longer time. We also need enabling rigor frameworks. For instance, when it comes to data access, when it comes to ethical considerations, privacy enhancing techniques. We need right legal frameworks, and we also need key partners to make this happen. So with that, I leave it for question and answers. Maybe we have more time to discuss. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Therese. I liked the many examples, concrete examples, which you highlighted, and your insights into what was key drivers for this success was really, really useful. I'm inviting participants, we are close to 100, to post any questions in the Q&A section of the Zoom call. We should have a bit of time for selecting some of them and giving them to the panelists. So don't be shy, put your questions. And to the three panelists who have already spoken, I'd like to give you one or two questions which you can prepare while Johannes will be also speaking shortly. The first question is, could you tell us of one thing which you have seen recently or which you have heard on this topic of AI and statistics, AI and data for policy, which has excited you or scared you recently, and how do you position yourself on these examples? So that's one. And the second one, what could be a useful input from us in Paris 21 as a global network of statisticians, aid agencies, civil society, working on statistical capacity development? What would be a useful input from us to you guys where you sit on this topic, and where should we spend our time and energy? So these are two questions you can reflect on. And I'm moving now to Johannes Huting, with our last but not least speaker, is the executive head of Paris 21, as many of you would know. Johannes, you have the floor to bring this all together in 7 minutes.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, colleagues. It's a great pleasure for me to join this conversation. I will be extremely brief. I just wanted to highlight 2 points. The first is the timeliness and relevance of this conversation. And the second one is very quickly on what I think Paris 21 can bring to this conversation. I have to admit, I was really, really very pleased to hear so many concrete examples just now. And I have to say, I still need to digest the presentation by our colleague from Ghana, by Therese from Rwanda, and by Paul. Really, really quite concrete examples of how AI can help us solve very complex development problems. I think we are all aware that we only have a few years left to achieve or to make progress towards the Sustainable Development Goals, and we are failing a little bit to be left behind. And to see AI as a mean to advance on this journey is very important. Now, I invite you, I had the opportunity this morning when I was preparing for this webinar to look at the summit that happened in Paris yesterday and before yesterday, the global summit, the AI summit. And it's quite interesting to hear leaders speaking, presidents speaking about this topic. And what I could see is that there is quite a conversation about the opportunities of these new technology and the risks. And this has been debated quite significantly in also many of the side events. And we have highlighted many of the productivity enhancing role of AI and what AI can do good, but also the specific issues of privacy, confidentiality, mistrust, inaccuracy. And I believe that for our community, for the statisticians, and for the data community, exactly those questions are at the center of the conversation that we should have to balance these potential trade-offs. And this is something I believe that we have to step up and step on the gas, as a former chief statistician of the UK said when the SDGs were agreed upon. I think for the AI technology and for official statistics, it's probably just the same. Now, for Paris 21 specifically, we are interested in supporting the global south, and within the global south, specifically those countries with low capacity and low connectivity. I think we really, really have to pay attention that we see that those technology advancements that we can see in the frontier data systems are also made available for those countries potentially left behind. And here I think the great examples of specifically Rwanda and Ghana, and there are many other countries there, how can they be brought to other countries who are maybe not yet at that stage, who are not at that stage to use AI across the data value chain, from the sourcing in of the data collection, to data dissemination and data impact. So that's a real important question. I really wanted to flag the risk of an AI divide. We really have to make sure that all countries can benefit from it. Now, very quickly, and then I think it's great we have time for some questions from all of you. So please, as Francois said, put it in the chat. What's the role of Paris 21 in this whole game, the Partnership in Statistics for Development in the 21st Century? First of all, we are a very broad partnership. We have lots of different institutions. If you look at our board membership structure, you will find OECD, National Statistical Offices and development donors. You will find international organizations. You will find a lot of National Statistical Offices from all over the world. And we find data producers and data users. So I think we have something to say and we can bring something to the table. Secondly, I believe we have a long history and track record of the mission, better data for better policies for better lives. And I think we have a mandate and we need to support National Statistical Offices in their journey towards using these new tools. And I'm very delighted to highlight 2 points, very concrete points that we will start imminently this year. Is first, we will have set up, and our board agreed to set up a task team on AI for development. The task team will specifically look at concrete case studies. I think it's very important to document what is happening now. And I think Francois said it very prominently. It's happening all very, very quickly and exponential quickly. So we need to do an inventory. What is happening in the countries? We need to document and we need to learn what are the drivers for success and failures in the implementation for National Statistical Offices, and what are the frameworks who can guide us. That is one thing. And on that basis, we can possibly develop some guidelines and rules. The second thing, which I think is also important, to bring back from those local experiences the lessons learned to the global level. I think it's extremely important that specifically those countries in the global south and their challenges are not left out at the table when the big tech and the big more northern countries are discussing about those things. So we need to make sure there is a feedback loop, what we discuss in these specific task team. And the second point is we, thanks to Google, we will be able to start a very practical project in a couple of countries to do exactly field documentation, to look specifically at governance structures, to look specifically at capacity development and skills and knowledge, which is, of course, a critical factor in ensuring success for AI for development. So we are very delighted that we are part of this conversation, but we need all of you here to help us. It's a journey for many of us. And we are just at the beginning. Sometimes people are a little bit afraid and say, oh, the train has gone out of the station. It's too late for me to join. No, I think it's as the president of the EU Commission yesterday said, Ursula von der Leyen, I think she said it very clearly. This is a beginning. We can still all join. It's not too late. And I think it's very important now that we set the ground rules of how we can best join this conversation. And I'm very excited to have these prominent speakers that we hear and all of you online to help us with this journey. So with these few words, Francois, back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Johannes. Very clear call and very interesting follow-ups in terms of next steps from Paris 21. So thank you very much, the four panelists, for your interventions. I think this was extremely useful to frame the different angles in the conversation. We have like a bit more than 10 minutes to cover a few follow-up questions. We had some questions from participants on two dimensions. One was, and I'm not going to point any of them to anyone in particular, but please take the floor to say clever stuff you have. So the first one was on capacity of NSOs, and we heard from Ghana, we heard from Rwanda, which are largely seen as lead NSOs with good capacity to innovate and to bring solutions. So the question here was, what is there for least advanced countries and least advanced data systems in those countries? So that's question one. The second question was on bias in AI and what it all means for playing with AI on development data. And there was a particular example on gender bias. I think, Paul, you mentioned some of the geographical and language bias of AI, but if you could also look a bit in the gender bias of AI. But these two questions on capacity and bias, who'd like to give a few thoughts on this? Thérèse, yes, please.
Thank you. Maybe if I start on the capacity side, we need, as Johannes just said, we are all starting. Even if maybe Francois, you just said Rwanda looks like it's ahead, but we are not maybe ahead, but we just explored opportunities and we built from what was already existing. So when it comes to capacity, we made sure that we are developing partnerships with academia, with other partners that can help us improve our and train our staff. For instance, at the moment, we have already data scientists that are embedded by our partners. We have a partnership with ODI, we have partnership with academia where they place their professor and their assistant professors into the statistical office to help us build and develop capacities. So that's what I can say on the capacity. And it's an ongoing process. And when it comes to biases, my perspective is that AI tools are biased because they are not well trained. So we need to make sure that we train them with right data so that they don't have a single story. They are inclusive in the training data set. So when they are well trained, they are not biased. Over.
Thank you very much, Thérèse. Any other reactions from our panelists?
Yeah, just on the bias question, indeed. I think the AI models may exacerbate the risk of bias also in the gender dimension, but they don't necessarily introduce them. So what I mean with that is that you got to be very careful again in how you feed these models, how you train, and what data you put in. So if you're looking at maternal healthcare, you actually make sure that you have training data which is based on real life situations from a wide variety of use cases, from people's perspectives, etc. And the risk, of course, there is that a lot of say the tech community, probably the engineers working on AI are male and have probably Western as well, well educated and have their own perspectives, whether that's conscious or not. So I think and yes, if once you feed those into ML models, into training data, etc., that might exacerbate the outcomes of that. So you have to be very conscious of that. I think it's the only possible solution to that. And yeah, I just ask everyone to, if you're asking the question, you're probably already aware of those biases and can help counter them. So I guess that's, I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Paul. Johannes?
Yeah, I just wanted to add one aspect of maybe which is not looked at it so much at this stage is when you talk about capacity development. We can unpack capacity development on different levels, on capacity development of people, of institutions, and of systems. Let's talk about capacity development of people. I think it's very clear for me that AI integration tools and frameworks in National Statistical Office has to lead to upskilling of its workforce significantly. And we will see that there is a lot of pressure these days for all governments in this world to cut costs. So AI tools will be used to cut costs, and cutting costs mean often cutting personnel. And it's very clear that using these tools will free up eventually the workforce or parts of the workforce. So there is an absolute need for managers to be trained and to be aware of the labor market effects of applying those tools and using those tools, and very, very quickly also to upskill the workforce to be able to use these tools so that we can retain and retrain the workforce. So I think that's extremely important and will be a huge operation for many statistical offices in the years to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Johannes. Clear call for capacity development here. Prof. Sam, would you have a perspective on this as well from your own office?
Yes, and Francois, I want to reiterate what I said earlier on in terms of our perception about AI. I think we have really put it on a certain level that makes us think that it's only limited to the predictive side of things and the general side of things. There's a lot that can happen on the narrow side of AI, which is the main point that I want to put across, because there is a lot of ignorance going on about what AI can do. There's a lot of fear about what AI is going to do for us, and there's a lot of misinformation. And that is one area that I think we need to try and let people know that it's come to stay with us. What we need to do is to see how best we can coexist with this new world of AI. And that is where NSOs should come on board and say that if previously I was, for instance, not producing statistics for all my subnational units, now with AI, with the power of the brain, the muscle to process things faster, how can I deploy AI in that context? And when it comes to some of the narrow use cases, the issue of bias doesn't come in at all. It really gets us to do our work better in terms of doing it faster, which is a dimension of quality, and also getting more granular data, which is also a dimension of quality. So going into the question that you asked from my point of view, and because I've been with this conversation, I think one of the things PARI 21 we're going to do going forward is to profile all these use cases and publish them. Whether they are exploratory stage or whatever, the community will know that we can deploy AI tools in diverse ways. Then people can say that why don't I approach country B, country A to see how they did it so that I can learn from that. Clearly, the cases that were presented by Rwanda, we are not doing them in Ghana, and likewise as well. So profiling of these use cases, in my view, is one of the easiest way to go. And obviously, with our strong role in the national strategy for the development of statistics, we can really extend it in helping NSOs to develop an AI roadmap. If we leave it to be embedded in a national strategy for the development of statistics, we cannot really string out the issues. So PARI 21 should start that practice of helping and providing guidelines for NSOs to develop their roadmaps. Thank you, Enova.
Thank you very much, Prof. Sam, for proposing a few direct follow-ups for Paris 21 here and meaningful avenues for us. I'm conscious of the time, but I'd like to give everyone a chance to give us one piece of advice in terms of what Paris 21 should be doing. Maybe not Johannes, but if Therese and Paul have ideas or advice, we're always looking for advice.
Thank you, Francois. In addition to what Professor Sam just said, I agree. I couldn't agree more with him. We need to share case studies, what worked, but also what didn't work, because not every country has to repeat the same mistakes over and over again. We need to share experience and move together. But second to that, I would, if we can, maybe we can leverage the power of Paris 21 in terms of infrastructure. When it comes to AI, there is really infrastructures that are needed that maybe most of the countries could not afford. At least if maybe if you can leverage the partnership with maybe Google, NVIDIA, there are many industries that are doing infrastructure, hardware infrastructure and software infrastructure, so that we have the computing power needed, at least at exploratory phase, because otherwise it's really hard for NSOs to leverage some of these technologies. Over.
Thank you very much, Therese. Two words from Paul?
Yeah, from my perspective, I think Paris 21 is an excellent position to provide essentially kind of a hub of knowledge and maybe function as a convener of like what are the best practices, what are the guidelines, what is the best what are ways that NSOs can make proper use of AI in a way that actually helps their work. And in the one as Johannes mentioned, in some spaces this AI may lead to essentially cutting costs and trying to do things with less staff. But on the other hand, it might also lead to NSOs that have never had the capacity or the staff to be able to generate all the necessary statistics and be able to track all the hundreds of SDG metrics and actually give them the capacity to start doing so. What I think you need to be careful then is to start using that data to actually make direct decisions on people's lives, which is where I think the bias questions comes in again. Like, but actually enabling NSOs that to build a capacity and to support where it hasn't been present before is a very good opportunity for a lot of your members.
Thank you very much, Paul, and thank you everyone for your questions and the very good advice from the panelists. So
François, can I just say something? Sorry.
I can't say no to my boss, Johannes.
Of course not. No, I just wanted to some extent, there was some interesting question posed about governance and ethics and conflictuality, privacy, and in the chat. It's very difficult to answer those questions, those generic ones. What I would like to say is, building on what Sam was saying, where we could maybe be useful as Paris 21 is linked to the NSDSs, the national strategies. Look, I mean, these processes have to be country-led. It has to be clearly led by the countries. And this brings me to a point which we can just mention here, and we discussed, François, before preparing here, is the whole question of the localization of AI tools, meaning bringing this conversation to the local level, to the city level, citizens level, to the regional level, from the global level to the regional level, and have those conversations in countries. And I couldn't agree more with Paul. I see our role here more as a facilitator, as a knowledge broker, as bringing these different things together. We have these very nice tools, the NSDSs. We have to augment them. We have to see the balance. But this has to be done in very close consultation and with local context. Each country is different. The preferences for the risk and technology are different. So that's very important to have this driven by the countries. So I just wanted to say this, François, at the very end of this nice webinar. Back to you. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Johannes, for adding those very important points. Let me try to, so I was thanking everyone for their very valuable contributions and everyone who participated and shared questions. There are a number of questions. You were a bit slow to start with questions, but nothing seemed to be stopping you at the moment. So we'll keep track of the questions, and there are nice food for thought, and we'll come back to you eventually. So maybe a few things from as a conclusion. I think we heard quite a history of successes from two NSOs, yet it's very early, and I think Johannes nailed it, that those who have not started should not be discouraged, or it's never too late to start and to be active, and you can leapfrog by learning from the successes and the failures of the ones who started a bit earlier. And I think there's a clear call. I hear a clear call for Paris 21 to work on this, and that's certainly one of the missions which we will try to deliver through our task team on AI use cases. So that's one. Second one is really the positive tone. I was actually asking for optimism, but everyone seems bringing solutions, and this is really something precious. I think in this community we have to be optimistic. So we are not necessarily going to change the course of action, yet we can make it local, we can make it relevant, we can improve AI governance by showing what we've been working on data governance for decades. And I think there's a duty from our community to expose itself and speak up and speak out. So AI as an opportunity is something which came very, very clear from everyone here. And in terms of immediate next steps, of course, we'll be working together with our partners. UNSD has a fantastic working group on AI, big data for years. The World Bank is financing compute and digital infrastructure, and many governments are actually investing much more. So it's not small Paris 21, which will be a game changer, but will bring solutions. And as Johannes was mentioning, we have a few very concrete follow-up actions. One is a task team looking at knowledge products around what is working, what is not working on AI in NSOs and in official statistics. And the other one is a project where we will be supporting 5 countries to help in making AI data ready. And that's really something on which we want to learn and bring solutions and bring knowledge from the ground and in a decentralized manner. So these are nice follow-ups. Again, thank you very much for being with us. This was, I think, a very valid contribution to the AI Action Summit and a very useful conversation for us in the Secretariat. Thank you very much. Have a good rest of your day. And for those who are staying on in the task team meeting, it's happening in 2 minutes, I think, and in a different link. Thank you very much. Have a good day.